The chair scraped loudly across the cafe floor just as Sarah felt her patience finally crack, the noise cutting through the hum of strangers and clinking cups like a breaking thread inside her chest. Rain tapped against the windows while people squeezed shoulder to shoulder, chasing warmth and caffeine, and her small table felt like the only fragile island she had left after another brutal morning of rejection emails and overdue notices. When a tired-looking man named Michael hovered nearby, holding a paper cup and searching for somewhere, anywhere, to sit, she hesitated. What would you have done in that moment when your own world felt like it was falling apart? Would you have shared the last inch of your space with a stranger carrying invisible storms? Sarah's life in Portland had shrunk into survival mode after losing her nursing job during hospital cutbacks. Leaving her juggling late bills and quiet panic attacks, she hid behind polite smiles. She worked freelance gigs now, sketching portraits for tourists and skipping meals to keep her tiny apartment. Michael looked no different from dozens of exhausted fathers she'd seen before, wearing a worn hoodie and carrying the weary eyes of someone who hadn't slept well in years. She motioned silently toward the empty chair across from her, offering a small kindness that cost her nothing but a moment of trust. Neither of them realized that this accidental intersection would quietly rearrange their futures. Michael carried more than just a coffee. He carried the weight of raising his young daughter Grace alone after losing his wife to illness 3 years earlier. Beneath his simple clothes and unshaven face hid a man who had built a successful technology company and quietly sold it for millions. Yet wealth had never softened his grief or loneliness. He had started spending time in ordinary places like crowded cafes because he missed genuine human connections that money could never buy. Sitting across from Sarah, he noticed the way her hands trembled when she checked her phone, and the way she forced herself to smile at strangers even when her eyes looked hollow. In that shared silence, both felt seen in ways they had forgotten were possible. Days turned into weeks, and they kept crossing paths at the same cafe without planning it, drawn together by a comfort neither wanted to question too quickly. Sarah found herself sharing small pieces of her struggles through casual storytelling rather than direct confession, and Michael listened with the quiet patience of someone who understood loss deeply. She admired his humility, assuming he worked odd jobs or struggled like she did, and she respected the fierce love he showed whenever he mentioned his daughter's dreams of becoming an astronaut. What if you had met someone who treated your pain gently without asking for anything in return? Would you have trusted that kindness, or would fear have convinced you it was temporary? One afternoon, Sarah lost a freelance contract that she had counted on to pay her rent, and the news left her numb as she sat staring at her coffee long after it turned cold. Michael noticed the subtle collapse in her posture and offered quiet companionship rather than advice, simply staying present while she struggled to hold herself together. He saw his own past in her exhaustion, remembering the nights he had held Grace while silently mourning his wife and wondering how to rebuild a shattered life. Sarah, in turn, found herself comforting him when he spoke about single parenthood, realizing that grief wore many different faces, but carried the same heavy ache. The truth about Michael's wealth remained hidden until a chance moment shattered the illusion of his ordinary life. Sarah had reluctantly accepted a last-minute job painting a mural for a local charity event, and when she arrived at the venue, she was stunned to see Michael stepping out of a sleek black SUV while volunteers greeted him with respect and gratitude. Confusion and hurt swirled through her chest as she learned he had funded half the organization's programs anonymously, using his fortune to support families struggling with illness. She felt betrayed not because of his money, but because she had believed they were equals in hardship, and suddenly she questioned whether their connection had been genuine or simply a wealthy man's curiosity about someone broken. Michael struggled to explain his reasons for staying hidden without turning their fragile bond into something transactional or pity-driven. He feared that revealing his wealth too early would create walls between them or make Sarah feel small, and he had grown to value the way she treated him like a normal person rather than a benefactor. Sarah wrestled with conflicting emotions, balancing her anger at feeling deceived against the undeniable kindness she had witnessed in his actions and the sincerity she felt in his presence. Her nights were filled with restless thoughts about trust, dignity, and whether vulnerability could survive the shock of unexpected truths. Eventually, Sarah agreed to meet Michael one last time at the cafe where everything had begun, determined to speak honestly about her hurt while acknowledging the impact he had made on her life. She realized that beneath her frustration lay a deeper fear of being seen as a charity case rather than a strong, capable woman fighting to rebuild herself. Michael shared the quiet loneliness that had followed his success, explaining that wealth had never filled the empty chair beside him at family dinners or eased the ache of raising Grace alone. Their conversation unfolded slowly, marked by pauses heavy with regret and understanding, and both recognized that the connection they had built was rooted in shared humanity rather than financial equality. Over time, Sarah allowed herself to accept that people carry secrets not always out of deception, but sometimes out of fear, and she began to see Michael not as a millionaire, but as a father trying to navigate life's unpredictable storms. Michael, inspired by Sarah's resilience, started volunteering his time rather than just his money, rediscovering purpose through genuine community work and creative projects with her. Grace became a bright presence in Sarah's life, reminding her of hope through her unfiltered laughter and boundless curiosity. Slowly, Sarah rebuilt her confidence, using her art to mentor struggling teens and finding strength in giving back rather than measuring her worth through financial stability. One evening months later, Sarah returned to the same crowded cafe and noticed another exhausted stranger searching for a place to sit. And without hesitation, she moved her bag aside to offer the empty chair with a warm smile. She realized that the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward in ways no one could predict, reshaping broken hearts and opening doors to unexpected healing. Michael watched from across the room with quiet pride, understanding that their journey had been less about wealth or struggle and more about the courage to trust again after life had knocked them down repeatedly. Before the story ends, take a moment to comment below and share what you would have done if you were sitting at that table, faced with a stranger carrying unseen pain and possibility. As the rain began to fall again outside the cafe windows, Sarah reflected on how a single compassionate decision had changed not only her future, but the future of a grieving father and a hopeful little girl, proving that second chances often arrive disguised as ordinary moments. If this story truly touched your heart and reminded you of the power of kindness and unexpected connections, please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing, so more people can feel the warmth of stories that remind us we are never as alone as we think.